There's no part of the home more terrifying than the basement. And this is not just a sense that affects children, but can unnerve even the bravest of adults. What is it about the basement that seems to be a beacon of strange activity? There is a reason that it's the focal location of most horror movies, and it seems that in real life, people have had their own very real encounters. Things moving in the dark, growls, far off voices, something breathing when you are not. What's haunting the basement? We dive deep into the spaces no one wants to go alone. And with our special guests today from A&E's Ghost Hunters series, Brian Murray and later Richel Stratton. We also have a special guest popping in to discuss the science of this strange activity and location. That's right, from America Unearthed, Scott Wolter will be visiting with us and stopping in. All that and more when we return with the Paranormal 60 with Dave Schrader.
I'm not gonna stand here and listen to this baloney. You won't know. He doesn't stand for baloney.
Sounds like a lot of supernatural baloney to me.
Supernatural, perhaps. Baloney, perhaps not.
Oh, I like it. Bart L. has struck again with an amazing opening for us. Bart, thank you so much. I appreciate all the hard work you do behind the scenes and helping me bring this together. We have got an interesting show for you tonight. Let's get right to it. From A&E TV's presentation of the TV series Ghost Hunters, we have our buddy Brian Murray joining us. Hello, Brian. Good to see you, buddy.
How are you, Dave? Doing well?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Trying to, make the best of the strange world we're living in and see what we can uncover together in these stories. And I wanted to talk about haunted basements, even haunted attics. We'll get into a little bit here today, but I grew up in a town in Medina, Illinois, right? And talk about white bread civilization. We were a nice little unincorporated town, a block away from the high school, half a mile away from the middle schools. You couldn't have asked for a better environment to grow up in. And for the first 12 years of my life, I slept upstairs in a little bedroom right off of my parents' room. And then as a teenager, I wanted the Greg Brady, right? I wanted the big room, and I begged for the basement. So my dad partitioned part of it off so that he could have his area. And then I got about more than half of the basement as my bedroom. And I started to pick up on the fact I was not alone pretty quickly down there. Now, my dad used to taunt me, Brian, with the blood beast that lived under the stairs, right?
Same here.
My dad taunted you too. That's weird.
Oh, super weird. And I'm from Illinois.
Oh, very cool. So, yeah, he would taunt me with these stories of the blood beast, and he would tell me stories of when he was growing up in Chicago, and his parents would send him downstairs to get something from the basement. He would see how fast he could get down the stairs, get to the pantry, grab the item, and back up the stairs, holding his breath so that nothing could get him. Nothing could find him in that time. And that always cracked me up, just hearing those kind of tales. But it affects everybody. I heard things. I saw things. And I had one wall, no poster, no picture, nothing would ever stay up. So I hung Bruce Springsteen American flag in front of the wall. And I say Bruce Springsteen American flag because he was silk screened onto it, right? And it would be there in front of the wall. And all of a sudden you'd see it start to ripple and move, and it would blow out like there was something behind the wall blowing through it. I could never make heads nor tails of it. But you get called into locations and you've investigated all over. Why do you think the basement is always the focal point of high strangeness?
I think it's the let's just put it to you this way. Like you said, all scary movies and things like that, the basement, the attic, those places are the places that are the most scary. For me, in the area that I grew up in, Illinois, I'm also from a small town. We have limestone quarries everywhere. We have the river that is super close to us. We have train tracks that run through. I mean, these are all hotbeds for paranormal activity. I'm a construction worker, so I go to a lot of these houses, and most of the houses that I work in are made out of limestone. They're already spooky. You know what I mean? I've got 3 incidences that have happened to me in the basement.
Now, are these, as an investigator, you've had these experiences, or have ever any of these taken place just when you were living and dealing in a home that you lived in?
2 as an investigator, once in a house that I lived in.
All
The
right.
one I lived in, similar to your story, the basement was when you messed up, you're going to the basement. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to clean the basement up, or bad grades, that's where you're going. Because I was scared of it. I was scared to be down there. It's dark. There was no windows in ours. We had an old coal room. That was spooky. We didn't do anything in that coal room. Nothing was kept in there. It just was shut. I know that I got in trouble one time, and I had to go down there and clean the basement. So I'm doing the cleaning. I'm doing all that stuff. Later that evening, as I'm sleeping, something tried to wake me up. I opened my eyes, and there was a white face in my face. And it said,
All right.
hello.
Hold on a second now. Because
Okay.
as soon as you said that, your video stopped and stalled for a second and then came back at us. So what was hovering over you?
A white face in my face.
Okay.
I was laying in my bed. I saw a white face probably 3 inches from me. I did the cover over the head, turned away, was like, I don't want to see that. I don't know what that was.
Do you think that this was male, female, a child, an adult? What kind of presence did you sense from it, or see in the face that was etched before you?
Absolutely male. I can feel that it was male because it almost seemed like it was angry in my face. Like I was in a territory that I shouldn't have been in. The very next night, it happened to my brother. He woke me up. We shared a room. He woke me up. He says, hey, Bri, what are you doing in my face? I said, I wasn't in your face. He said, you were about 3 inches from my face. I saw you. I said, no, you sure didn't. Didn't tell him the story until the next morning. Still got spooked. My dad, who worked shift work, this was during the day. Me and my brother were in the room. We're playing Nintendo, if you can imagine those days. We were playing Nintendo. He walks in, opens it up. He's a shift worker, and he's like, okay, who's all in my face? You know I got to work. He described somebody being super close, and we got in trouble. So we had to go back and work in the basement. That's
Well, wait, did you try to explain to Dad that it wasn't either one of you?
Absolutely. It's not us. We wouldn't do that. This happened to me. This happened to Tim, my brother Tim. It didn't happen. He didn't believe in anything. He thought we were there going to basically try to wake him up. So we got in trouble. We went down there and got down there, and on that coal room door, scratched in the door, was my name, my brother's name, and my dad's name.
No. So I hope you burn the place to the ground, Brian.
What's that?
I hope you burn the place to the ground.
Well, we repainted the door. And a few months later, those names bled through the paint. So we ended up having to actually take the door off of the coal room. And my mom would put Christmas decorations or whatever she thought was, going to help us out in there so we wouldn't have that happen again. Okay,
so did your mother took you seriously then that this was something supernatural?
Absolutely, because my mom had other incidences in the house that, she would be down in the basement doing laundry. That's where, in the Midwest, a lot of your laundry is kept down there. And she'd be doing it and the lights would come off. She would go and turn it back on. She would think we were down there with her. So she absolutely believed us. And you can hear people during the night. It sounded like walking up the stairs, to the point where we actually put a lock on the door because it would be open in the morning. Like we'd go to sleep. Everybody would lock all the doors.
Sure.
The house, and you check everything. Because my dad did work shift work. It was up to me and my brother.
Right.
And in the morning time, that stuff would be open. You can hear stuff all during the night.
Now, having this experience and seeing these names carved in the door, my dad would have kicked my ass up and down those stairs 14. What are you carving on the doors for, idiot? That would have been it. And no, it wasn't abuse. It was the 80s when kids were idiots and allowed to be punished by parents, right?
Yes.
How did your dad respond when names were scratched in the door?
He actually was real pissed, thinking that we were doing it.
Right.
It didn't take until I think about 2020 when my dad, he spent 2 years in the hospital recently. And for him to really realize, like, I do believe you now. He must have seen stuff in the hospital, but he said, I finally do believe that something was going on there. Now, everybody had experiences in the house. He just never said anything. You know, he was being the strong guy. You know,
Sure.
I'm not gonna say anything. But yeah, my uncle. So my dad also lived in the house when he was a kid, and my uncle Tom was terrified of the basement. So this is not just my generation or my, you know, me and my brother.
Mhm.
Oh, it was when they were kids too. They were having those experiences. So
Very strange. All right, so this was a childhood experience. Did that haunting continue the entire time you lived there, or did it finally settle down?
it never did really settle down. It never did do anything like it wasn't aggressive. I guess we kind of got used to the fact that it was there. I did
It
bring,
wasn't aggressive, yet it was hovering over your face. Is that
yeah,
not
and I think that was because later on I figured out that I think it just wanted some attention because, um, you know, nothing really ever happened bad, and it would only show up and do things when we weren't paying attention to it at all. You know what I
gotcha?
mean?
Yeah.
I know I had a girlfriend come over one time and she was on the couch. We were on the couch. We're watching a movie. Everybody was gone. It was me and her. And she got up and just left. And I thought, well, at least I'm free. I don't have no girlfriend. That's good. I got somebody in mind. Um, but I asked her why she left. And she saw somebody standing in my bathroom. And she could see, you know how light hits glasses?
Hmm.
There's a reflection.
Like
She could,
this?
yeah.
Like this? Yeah. Okay.
Right off because I got lights. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, she could see the lens flare on the glasses of somebody standing in the bathroom.
But she
And
didn't say anything to you. She just out the door.
up and left. I thought, what did I do? Did you not like the movie? Come on. So she took off and she really never came back in the house, which is a blessing. Years later.
Oh my God, that's horrific. All right. First of all, if you're tapping something on your desk, it's right near your microphone, so we're getting a lot of clicking. I just
Okay.
want to make sure we're cool. All right. I know you don't have a whole lot of time here, but you said that now that was your childhood as an adult and being on investigations. You've had experiences a few times in basements. Brian, what are those experiences?
I was at Hamilton Primary School. It's a school from the 1800s. It's in a little town called Otterville, Illinois. There's literally 100 people that live there. Got to the chance to investigate. I'm down in the basement, and you know they had heard some things down there, but I went down there first. I'm with one of my buddies, Matt, and we can hear some walking in the far corner of the building. I mean, I can hear. You know what walking is. You're an investigator. You know.
Yeah, I've been doing it since I was 2, so yeah, I'm familiar
Right.
with walking.
You know when you hear walking.
Right.
Went to go see what that was, obviously. And as I got within probably 5 feet of the footsteps, it was almost like somebody blew in my face because I stepped back and my natural reaction, I'm a Marine, man. My reaction was I threw 2 punches trying to hit somebody. The guy I was with, his name was Matt. He was upstairs before I know the second punch. And so I went upstairs after that because I couldn't. It startled me. I'm not gonna be ashamed.
Right.
It startled me. Something blew in my face, and to that point, that was the first time that I really had a reaction with being touched, being, you know, like I felt it, man.
Yeah.
Okay, there was no doubts. I still talk about that. Do those punches, and you know, honestly, that was the experience. I've been back since, and I am drawn to that area. And I know Richel's going to tell you a little story about that area tomorrow or later on.
Right.
So yeah, there's more that happens in that basement. That was directly with me. This one will be with her and me. So.
You're just really quickly off of that. It reminds me of a story we heard years ago on the radio show I used to host. And this guy, they had a baby's room, you know, that's where the baby was kept, hence the name. And the mother kept picking up that there was something in there. She was very unnerved by it. She'd hear voices in there. And she talks him into saging. The husband, he didn't believe in the paranormal. He didn't. So he's like, okay, I got sage. We're going to do this. And he lights the sage and he puts it out. It's still burning because, you know, you light the sage, let it burn and then blow it out so that it slowly burns the ember, right? He didn't blow out the fire. So he's waving around, smoke's billowing off of this thing. He and his wife see, impressed into the smoke, this face comes forward and goes, and blows the flame out. So to me, you think, oh, sage, we're going to be safe. This
Right.
thing showed him how to work it. Just blew the sage out. That,
Yeah.
oh, I get the, look at that, the willies
I
on
actually got 'em
high.
too, man. You're not
Yeah.
I actually have them too.
All right. One more. Yeah, you've got it covered. One more basement tale before we let you go and visit with Scott Wolter. But let's hear where this other location was.
Okay, this one right here is in Alton, Illinois, Mineral Springs Mall or hotel.
Mhm.
It's pretty well known. A lot of shows have been there and things like that.
Mhm.
There is a place called the Sub Basement. I think it's probably 6 or 7 floors below like a regular basement. It's way down, and it's pitch black. We're investigating there. And I got a thermal cam. I'm just sweeping the area. It's a big area. They used to slaughter pigs and things like that down there. And one of the original mineral springs, looks like a big old pool was down there. Okay. Anyways, I'm sitting down there and I'm just scanning the area to see if I can get anything. We're hearing noises. And from one of the pillars, there's about 7 to 8 pillars down there. I see something peek out, and I've got it on the thermal, and I'm watching it. I'm only about 10 feet from it. And I look over to the investigator next to me and I said, you're seeing this, right? He's like, absolutely. It peaks 2 or 3 times and then it gets down, it crouches down, and I still have it. At this point, I'm like, this has got to be a human being over there. So I'm starting to talk to it like, if you're there, you need to go upstairs. Like, I can see you with this device. It gets on all fours, okay, and starts crawling at me. And I can see it. I'm getting the things right again. I can see it coming towards me, and then all of a sudden, it was just completely gone. Okay.
Nope.
When it got on all fours, Dave, my investigation days were almost over.
Really? It's funny what affects us, what makes us kind of think, yeah, that's the thing that makes me want to tap out.
When I can see it peeking, fine. We've seen that. We've been around things like that.
Mhm.
But it gets on all fours and starts crawling at me like the Exorcist did on its back. That's a whole new story. And then just to go away. And I've investigated this place hundreds of times. It's the only time that I've ever had that happen. I mean, I've got, several experiences down in the basements and things like that. But that one right there was probably the worst for me.
That's uncanny. We did an investigation here in a Minnesota location, this business that invited us in to be on TV for this little clip for one of the local TV shows. And they're like, yeah, of course you can come in. We've got ghost stories. And then they tell us the stories in the basement. And they've actually got an area with like these partitioned walls. And they've got a tanning booth back there. And I'm laughing. I'm like, oh, you guys have a tanning booth? She goes, yeah, the girls like to come down here on their breaks and tan. And I'm like, that's cool. So we do the investigation and they're all gone. And at the one point, I'm standing back behind this partition by the tanning booth, just trying to kind of tuck myself away to see if we could hear anything. And there's a little group of us and we start hearing something move around. So I take out the thermal camera and I lean around the corner and you could very clearly see the dark blues and blacks of the background. And you could see the corner of the partition in front of me. And all of a sudden around the partition, you just see this head lean around and look. And we're videotaping it. And then it leans back and we're all like, what the hell? We walk out there. There's nobody there. There's nothing in the basement. We showed it to the employer and her staff. And I came back to visit a few months later and she goes, well, I'll have you know, we now have a worthless tanning bed in our basement because nobody will use it after that, especially knowing that it was right there by the tanning bed. I'm like, well, if you're going to haunt a basement, that would be a good place to hang out, I guess. It's so strange, right? I mean, it's an inherent fear. Closets. I got to do an episode just on closets alone. And, Monsters, Inc. is hilarious because of that aspect, but there's something to it. There is definitely something unnerving dealing with closets. Basements, attics, I kind of understand, but closets is so weird.
Well, what if it's because these entities that we're going after, or we want to communicate with or whatever, they don't want to be communicated with? And instead of being in the living rooms or the kitchens, they go to the areas where they're not coming up to the attic. You know what I mean? Like when you get EVPs, you're getting a lot of those goes, those get
Right.
leave me type things. Could it be because they're going to those areas and that's where we are drawn to?
But see, logically, that would make sense. If I don't want to hear my kids gabbing at me, I go to another room.
Right.
But that's because they can see me.
That's true.
If I'm a ghost and I'm in a room, you don't have to answer the EVPs unless it's like an OCD ghost. It's so strange. But closets, I have had weird experiences. We have seen things. We have caught photographs. We've caught EVP. And sometimes they're more terrifying than any other place I've been in is when you start measuring inside the closet for paranormal activity.
Yeah, you definitely need to do a show on closets. I got a really good one for that too.
Well, we'll have you jump back in, or maybe what you should do is record the story for you, send it, and then I'll just try to get everybody to collect stories, and we'll just play a closet episode of all these creepy stories. Brian, thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with us. We look forward to chatting with you again in the future. I'm going to talk to your partner in crime here in just a little bit, but stay safe out there, and please report back as you have more strange activity. Would you do that for me?
Sure can. Have a good night. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Oh, and let the audience know about your special and how they can see it, where it can be seen.
What's
Sleepless Unrest? Yeah.
Sleepless Unrest. Yeah, it's a film on the Conjuring House. You can see it on 29 different platforms, from Amazon to it's actually on Discovery Plus right now, Tubi, and you can buy it at Walmarts and things like that. Check it out. Let me know what you think about it. I had a blast.
Sleepless Unrest.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Brian Murray. All right. Now, as I wanted to talk about the concept of strange things in the basement, these weird hauntings, obviously talking to my paranormal friends, I know what kind of answers I'm going to get from them, or at least I think I do. But I have a friend of mine who I respect. I enjoy talking with him, and he doesn't just scoff at the supernatural. Where he is an educated man and knows science, he is also open to concepts of bigger, broader spectrum things. And so much so that when we filmed an episode of the Holzer Files at America's Stonehenge, I reached out to him to be a part of our show. You'll recognize him from America Unearthed, and he is here with us today as we uncover what's haunting the basement. Scott Wolter, good to see you.
It's great to see you, Dave. But before we get going, I got to go back to this closet thing you were talking about.
Yes.
Now, is this you going in or coming out of the closet? I'm a little confused. Help me out with that.
I have come in and gone out of many supernatural closets through my years. It is, it's weird. It is so bizarre. And I know you're into kind of specialized architecture. You understand some of the mathematics behind that because of your work and research and things like the Masons and the Templars. And there is reasons for things, why they're built and their energy connectors. But I wanted to talk to you about the basement because it is something that terrifies everybody. And we've never talked about this, but why do you think that in a home that, again, why would that be a focal point for strange activity? If we don't know any deaths that took place down there, I know houses where the death took place in the bedroom or maybe in the hallway or they fell down a flight of stairs, but nothing associated with the basement. Yet that's where so much central weirdness takes place. Do you think there's any actual kind of scientific principle to, if that exists, how and why?
That's a really interesting question. And it's funny you would talk about basements because as I was scrolling through my news thread today, there was a story about a couple that bought a house and they didn't realize it, but the guy who had passed away, whose home they'd purchased, didn't realize that he had a hidden basement attached to the basement that everybody knew about. And he had a bunch of personal items in there. And I don't know what all, I didn't read the whole story, but it's interesting that we talk about basements.
Right. They found like a whole hidden room full of.
It was a whole hidden room full of personal items that this guy had hidden. I should have read the article. I didn't, but it just was interesting that you brought this up. Now talking about basements, it's underground, right? It's below grade, which is just the whole aspect of below grade and humans is actually very interesting if you look back at the historical record, because you'd mentioned that I'm a Freemason. I know a little bit about the history of rituals, and the pyramids actually have chambers underneath them where rituals were performed. The Templars are notorious for tunneling and having underground chambers where they would perform rituals. There's a very famous circular structure that goes deep into the ground in a private residence in Portugal that was used for ritual. So being below grade, being underground, being in caves is something that humans have naturally gravitated to do special, important, personal things like ritual. So with that sort of as a backdrop, I guess whether it's something that was developed over time or something that's incarnate within ourselves, I tend to think that there is something that's inside of us that has sort of, I'm not sure if affinity is the right word, but understanding that when you go below grade, there's something special about that. And being in the earth, which has its own unique energies, I think that maybe human beings tap into that when they're below grade, in a basement, in a chamber, in a cave. So I think there is something to it.
They talk about like nature energies, and that for a fact that there's that energy that exists, right, from different stones and granite and limestone and crystals and things of that sort, and Wiccans and pagans, and they're very much into grounding and rooting into the earth and
Right.
working with that power that exists there. Do you think then, in a sense, right, you've got underwater currents through most of these areas that have basements, you've got that cold, damp environment, you've got electricity running through the house, usually those kind of lines and pipes that are crisscrossing the basement area that are carrying the lifeblood of energy, right? Water
Right.
and electricity. Could we be creating almost like a power source for the supernatural in the basement that might draw things that have nothing to do with that home, or may have to do with more of the land itself?
Well, I think maybe there's a combination of things going on here. And keep in mind that there are certain, many people have called them historically ley lines of energy lines that go in different directions around the whole earth. And where there are intersections of these ley lines is where houses of worship are built, churches and mosques and ancient ritual sites, standing stone sites dating back who knows how far. Many of these date back thousands of years. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we have these intersecting energy lines, if you will, that create these very important special points where there's a lot going on energetically that I don't know if we fully understand.
Well, let me ask you about that. Ley lines is something the supernatural culture throws around a lot. The paranormal investigators and holistic people and energy people. You're a forensic geologist, right? I mean, it's your job to understand the earth and the ground and all. What kind of belief do you have in actual ley lines? Are there legitimate energy lines and patterns that do cross the earth in this kind of strange grid?
Well, the answer is yes. And part of the energy, if you will, is a difference in the magnetism that is within these zones in the earth. And I think some of this is created by the geology of the rocks themselves. There's different levels of magnetism in the rocks. And I just, to say that I fully understand it would not be correct. But I also think it's important to remember one thing, that planet Earth is very special in what some people would call the interstellar community, right? We have all these stars out there, planets that are circling around them, universes that are, we don't know how many there are. There's billions of them. But the one thing that we can say for sure is that planet Earth is uniquely special. It's teeming with life. And it's not just the plants and the animals and the humans that are running around on the surface and underground to a certain extent, but it's also the rocks itself. Because if you think about it, people, I would even go so far as to say that the earth is a living thing that has its own energy and its own life, if you will. And some people will say, wait a minute, you telling me that rocks are living? Well, my answer would be yes, because if you think about it, the energy, the chemicals that are needed, the elements and nutrients that plants need to grow and survive, that we eat to grow and survive, come from the earth, right? The rocks break down, the minerals give up their nutrients, the plants eat them, we eat the plants. And then we die, of course, and we go to what? Dust. So you have this cycle of life.
I thought you were going to say hell at first, but I'm glad you said
no,
dust.
No. Well, maybe you speak for yourself, okay? But I think you follow my point.
Right.
And I think at the end of the day, even as a geologist that is, grounded in science, I've seen the evidence. I've seen the way the earth works, that the whole thing, this beautiful sphere that we all live on, and frankly are not taking as good of care of that we should be, is a living thing. And so if you go coming back to your basement and paranormal activity in the basement, I think the closer you get to the earth, you go underneath the earth, the deeper you go, there's more going on.
It's interesting. There was actually an article that came out, I want to say even within the last 4 to 5 months, that talked about quantum science and a couple of other, I'm trying to think of the right word, a couple other different branches of science were starting to take note that they think inanimate objects might have consciousness, that there might be a life force to each and everything that exists.
That would be, I haven't seen anything directly that tells me that's something that I would ascribe to or I would promote. However, I will say this. I find it fascinating that at this particular point in time, as you know, Dave, I have been really been given a crash course in the whole UFO phenomena world. This was not something that I delved into for most of my life, but in the last couple of years, I've been immersed in it. And what I really find interesting is this whole notion of telepathic communication, that the ETs apparently, this is how they communicate. This is how they operate their spacecraft. This is who they are. And I do think that there is something to be said that human beings have this capability as well. We just haven't developed it. Maybe some people have, but by and large, the vast majority of us really don't even know that it's there, let alone understand that we probably have this ability if we knew how to tap into it. And so if that is the case, and you've probably read articles like this in the past where they say that humans only use about 8 to 10% of their brain capacity. And I'm sure a lot of people use even less. But what does that say about our potential? What does that say about this, this possibility that we could tap into that and not just communicate in a different way with them and with us, but who knows what else? Maybe we could tap into inanimate objects and whatever energy they have. So I'm not saying it's real. I don't know if it's real, but my mind is open to this possibility. You know what? As we get older, Dave, I used to think that we kind of had everything figured out. But the older I get, the more I realize every day there's more and more that I don't know. So it forces you, at least me, to be open-minded to just about any possibility. So the minute you start closing your mind is when you're going to get it packed, and you're going to be humbled.
It's like the stone has its own memory, right? That's the stone tape theory. But let me ask you, and I probably will butcher the pronunciation for this, but the piezoelectric phenomena with stones. Can you explain that?
I'm not that familiar with it, to be honest with you, but I do know this is that
stones do release an energy. I mean,
right.
That's a form of consciousness, isn't it? I mean, if it's something that is not just inert, it's not just there, but it's actually releasing a form of energy, it means that there is something more to it than just being a taco shell or a rock or a right. There's something from it.
Let's put it this way. If you go right back to the basic fundamental elements of everything, atoms have electricity. There are charges that are moving back and forth between the electrons, the neutrons, and there is an energy there in all things, right? So to say that these inanimate objects have nothing going on is not correct. This is happening all over the place. So could there be some type of transfer of energy that goes, well, it happens between humans, it happens with animals. I think you could make the argument it happens with plants. And if these molecules do have this energy, why can't that be happening with rocks? I think that's just intuitively to me, that would make sense. I don't understand enough of it to speak with any authority, but again, keeping an open mind to these possibilities,
right,
I just think makes a lot of sense. And with all this crazy stuff that you deal with in the paranormal world, that clearly is a real thing, and you don't have a full explanation of all the things that you experience, then what is going on? And I don't have an answer for you, but again, I will keep my mind open, because just when you think you got it all figured out, bam, a hard left turn comes and you need to rethink what you previously thought.
Agreed. Before we let you go, any projects you're allowed to talk about at this point? I know you've always got stuff brewing, but anything you can, books, new lecture series, new TV series?
Well, we are working on all of the above.
Okay.
And as you know, a good friend of ours, Jimmy Church, you and I were both guests on his show in the last few days. And Jimmy and I talked at length about a project we're working on called the Cremona Document, which is related to the Knights Templar. Mm-hmm. And it is the most fantastic content I have ever worked on. Obviously, I'm a Templar Freemason guy, and this goes to the heart of that world. And it's really incredible. So that is coming. And actually, that material is what I'm currently working on a new book on with the guy who brought this stuff to us, who used to be somebody who worked for an agency that did work with our government, primarily the military.
Being very cautious with the way you'd say that. I like it.
Was I being cautious?
A little bit. It seems like you might have been fudging a little bit.
I think I was.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point of all this is that because this person was associated with a world that you and I typically don't associate with, he was able to tap into resources that allowed him to get this information. Maybe I'll put it that way. And I will tell you this, it's absolutely fantastic. It will be history changing, and it will help everybody understand better what the Templars were up to, and then their ideological descendants, the Freemasons, of which I am a proud member of. And really, Dave, not to get too serious here, but it'll also help us understand where we as a nation, where we as a people in this country came from ideologically, because our country was founded by Freemasonry. Make no mistake about it. And currently, if you look at the way the world is sort of going, and specifically in this country, it's clear to me and to a lot of other people that I think before we can figure out where we're going to go in the future as a nation, as a people, as a country, we need to understand better where we've already been, where we came from. And that's what this story goes to the heart of. And stay tuned. It's going to be really good.
I know if you are involved, it is absolutely going to be good. And just remember, if you need anybody to play you in the reenactments, I'd be happy to step in. No, I just figured if I stood on top of my head, my gray goatee would look like your hair. We'd be okay. I could make that work. Scott Wolter, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for dropping by and spending a few minutes with us today and giving us more of a scientific approach.
Oh, you bet. Thank you, Dave. Anytime.
Always good talking with you. And we're talking about stone. We're talking about the energy. I've got something to talk to you about when we return. But first, make sure that you visit me here.
Seriously, guys, no, look at this. This sounds awesome. The Oregon Bigfoot Festival and beyond. July 30th, 2022 at the Clackamas County Fairgrounds in Canby, Oregon.
Hey, look at that right there.
Oh, yeah! So general admission is $25 online or $35 at the gate. But that includes admission to the Monsters and Mayhem show featuring Jason Hawes of Ghost Hunters and Cliff Barrickman of Finding Bigfoot. Oh, and even more! Oh, wow, look at them all! Cool!
It's gonna be awesome.
Say, baby, you guys thinking what I'm thinking? Road trip! Road trip! Road trip! Road trip! Tickets are available at OregonBigfootFestival.com. Hey, things are about to get squatchy. Again!
All right, we are back. I've got something cool. I told you we're talking about stones and gems and such. I've got a really neat new item that we've got. It is a Paranormal 60 protection and healing bracelet that we have partnered up with our buddies over at Maximalis. They are creating these. They are genuine stones and crystals. And they've also got a nice little scully in the center there so that you get to take a part of the Paranormal 60 with you wherever you go. They are fashionable, they're nice, and they're very easy to use. Just to let you know what the stones are, all of the pieces have been picked for grounding, protection, clarity. The cherry jade also for strength, warrior mode. Kind of sense. You've got obsidian for grounding and protecting against negative energy, hematite, which is very stabilizing and maintains a connection to the physical body while you're working in the spiritual realm. There's also smoky quartz, releasing all that does not serve you, and it transmutes negative energy into positive energy. So maybe you could take it off and rub it on your spouse, see if it helps with that. There's also snowflake obsidian, which helps to achieve a balance in mind, body, and spirit, clearing unwanted energies, and it assists in having one foot in the physical realm, the other foot in the spiritual realm. So if you are interested in getting one of these beauties, one of these Paranormal 60 energy and protection bracelets, they are $40 a piece, plus $6.95 shipping and handling in the United States. If you are trying to order for out of the country, prices are going to vary for shipping and handling. But if you're interested, email me, Dave at paranormal60.com. That's paranormal60.com. Dave at paranormal60.com. All right, our next guest is about to join us, but before she does, I'd like to show you a little trailer for a program that both she and her partner Brian have worked on together.
We have been warned something bad is still here.
At nighttime, it can be dark and sinister. Did you pack for 2 weeks?
Yes, sir.
Let's just film everything.
Nobody's doing this. Nobody's staying at a place for more than one night or 2 nights. We're living with this.
Holy. Be careful what you ask for.
Whoa.
They will get your attention. Who's there?
Very cool. That is the Sleepless Unrest. It is available on many different platforms, including Discovery Plus right now. It is time for our final guest. You know her from A&E's Ghost Hunters, also from Sleepless Unrest, and soon she'll be coming to a city near you. I know she's coming to a city near me in July. Richel Stratton, good to see you again. How are you?
Good to see you too, Dave. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. You know, we've been talking about creepy basements. We've been talking about the hauntings that take place in places like that, and talking to your partner, like, of course, here in the first segment. he said that you also have a very strange encounter that took place in the same basement where he felt like he had been kind of spit and blown at down in that basement area. But I do want to forewarn you before we get into the storytelling. I'm sorry, I can do nothing about it at this particular moment. Somehow one of my cats has found catnip and is tripping balls around my place right now. So while we're recording, there's a good chance you're going to hear terrifying noises, and that is just my cat absolutely freaking and tripping balls. So just be aware of that. If you start hearing it while you're telling your story, Richel, it's nothing demonic. Well, it's a cat that's kind of demonic.
I was gonna say,
little
aren't they
bit.
like keepers of the underworld or something?
That is true. So just be aware of that. I just don't want to freak out listeners, especially with what happened on our show last week. Richel, we were doing the show, and as we were talking about these dark energies and things that were going on, we were getting strange audio artifact live during the show, growls, different things that were taking place. It was very strange. That had nothing to do with my cats on catnip. This is totally different. So I just want to give the forewarning, but let's go to this basement. Now, where was this located again? Help me remember.
So this was Hamilton Primary in Otterville. It's a tiny, tiny town that I didn't even know existed. And it's not far from us. And I didn't even know that it was a town. So it's Hamilton Primary. I believe it was one of the first schools in Illinois to like ban segregation, I believe. Don't quote me on it, but that's what I remember from it. So it's a really cool building. It still has the school bell that you ring with the rope and things that we got to investigate, which was great. We're thankful that they let us in there. Brian had told me that he had been there before, and I was like, okay, sounds good. He told me the story about him coming downstairs, and he was down there and something went and like blew in his face to the point that it scared him enough to throw a punch, which I always say, don't pick a fight with a ghost. You're not going to win. But he decided to try to punch something that wasn't there.
Sure.
So he told me about this, and I was like, I'm very excited to investigate. And we went there, we were investigating. We went to the basement, and we were sitting down, and we kept seeing a shadow over in the corner. Looked like it was pacing or peeking in and out. So, we get up and we're trying to see, like, are there any windows casting shadows? Like, is anyone outside? Trees, anything. There were no windows.
Wait. You mean you're going through actual investigative protocol by trying to eliminate real things that could appear to be paranormal?
I know. It sounds kind of crazy, right?
But you're on TV. You guys actually do that?
Yeah. They just don't show that because that's boring.
I know.
Right?
I know. I get that same stuff all the time from people.
No one wants to see you prove that it's not a ghost. They only want you to prove that it is a ghost. So we're trying to, debunk it, and we can't find anything. There's not windows that are casting a shadow in that area. Like, there's one tiny window in the basement, but it's nowhere close. And so we're sitting there, and we're trying to interact with whoever or whatever may be over there. And they're peeking in and out. They're pacing. It was the weirdest thing because a lot of times when you see shadows, it's like you see a shadow pass and then it's gone. Mm-hmm. But this one kind of seemed like it was hanging out. And we had a ball, and we decided, we're going to roll the ball over there, So we rolled the ball over there and said, hey, can you roll that ball back to us? And we're sitting there, and the ball stops completely, and it's just sitting there. And Brian and I are kind of talking to each other, but we're still watching the area, and we see the shadow move towards the ball, and then the ball comes back to us.
Okay. So it actually starts to take off on its own volition.
Yes, it had been sitting there, and then it looked like the shadow pushed it back to us or kicked it back to us. It was crazy. Brian went to go hit me because he likes to hit when he sees paranormal activity to get my attention. But for some reason, I decided to play possum. Like, I was sitting on the floor, and when that came back, I just laid down. And I was looking up. I was I'm just going to try and melt into the floor, because I know it sounds horrible as an investigator. You shouldn't do that. I didn't run. but I was like, I'm going to try to blend into my surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the time when you, like, if you ask for knocks, you'll get that, but very rarely, or at least in my case, I have never seen a shadow or an entity do, like, move an object for me. So it was incredible, but also kind of terrifying because it was like, we are actually getting interaction and we're seeing it.
I love that the ghost just physically and mentally broke you. You saw it and you were like, I just need to lay down. No.
Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna lay down and just like take a minute. So yeah, it was crazy.
Well, if you found that crazy, I do have to warn you. You have something coming up very soon. You're going to be at the Palmer House on July 8th and July 9th doing a pair of different events with Brian. And that place is crazy, especially in the basement with shadow people. We just did an event there, and we had large groups of people watching shadow figures walking, not just these fleeting moments, but moving around, walking and intervening in our stuff. We've had them directly interact with the equipment, asking for them to communicate, and they start rapping on the window as we're standing there. And we've tested everything to make sure that it was not somebody downstairs or upstairs and something that was causing this. So you are in for one hell of a ride. If you're looking for shadowy activity and paranormal stuff that will let you know it's there, the Palmer House is definitely going to be that. So how can people find out where to sign up with you on this? Because I know you sent me banners, but there's no link.
We have links on our different social media pages.
Okay.
You can go to mine on Instagram and Facebook. I think I have it on Twitter, but I'm not positive. And it's a link. It's Linktree. You click on it, and it gives a list to the different investigations that we're doing, events, and you can click on it, and it'll take you to the page to buy tickets.
Well, I'll tell you what, folks, to make it easier for you, I will go get that link and I'll put it on this program guide so that it's easier for you guys to find. And
I could just that to you, but
I'm here to help. I'm here to help. That's all. So that's very cool. So you have these experiences, you know, that reminds me with the ball. I was at Waverly Hills Sanitarium, and this was well over a decade ago. And we were there and doing a live event. Patrick Burns from the TV show Haunting Evidence was there. Marley Gibson, co-author on the book that I wrote, The Other Side with Patrick. And I'm doing my rounds, checking on all the ghost hunts going on. We had over 100 people there ghost hunting in 4 different groups. And I go up to this room and they're sitting there, and hand to God, this ball is rolling around the floor by itself, and it would go across the room and come back. And at first I'm thinking it's got to be a breeze. And she's like, Marley goes, no, watch this. And when the ball comes over to her, she puts her finger on top of it. So she's holding it, and you hear like the ball's trying to take off. And then Patrick goes, maybe the ball will come over to me. And she lifts her finger, and the ball leaves her and goes directly to Patrick. And as he goes to reach for it, it ducks away and starts rolling a different direction. I grab the ball and shake it, thinking there's a hamster in this. There's something. This is impossible. Totally. I put it back on the ground, and boom, it takes off running again. We had a camera crew from the local news station there filming this. The guy's filming it, talking to me. And when he gets out, he goes, that was the freakiest thing I've ever seen. I cannot believe we just witnessed that. So I understand when you see that ball moving around, you actually see the activity takes place. It can kind of be a, know, you're like,
it, like you said it perfectly. It kind of breaks you.
Yeah.
We do it all the time. Like, we constantly go in to all of these creepy haunted locations, ask for activity. We get activity, but there's certain things that you just don't think are like, I'm going to ask you, but I don't think you're actually going to do it. And then when you do, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, that didn't happen. Did that happen? There must be a breeze, right? So people do understand, as investigators, we don't accept everything at face value, even when it happens to us. We sit there and we look, and you could have one of the most extraordinary encounters, and you will walk away from that trying to think of every logical, plausible explanation, and even insane. You know what? There must have been a spider crawling on that ball, and his weight was just enough to upset that ball. And you're like, that's insane to think that that's the rationale behind what happened.
you're drawing, like pulling at straws or whatever to try to figure out something other than you had paranormal activity and an interaction. You try to come up with whatever you can. And I don't know if that'll ever go away. I don't think that it will. Like, I think that something in our brains that no matter if you're an investigator or not, if something happens that you can't explain, you will try to find whatever reason, even if it's not logical, to explain it other than admitting that it's paranormal like activity, that someone is there interacting with you.
I will say, I will not drop names because I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I was at a location once and I had a very well-known, very famous, prominent paranormal investigator with me who has been on TV forever. And something very shocking. We physically saw a figure move out into the hallway and approach us and then just dissipate. And he turned and looked at me and then shook his head and turned around. He just started walking away. He goes, "That's it. I'm done. I can't even." And he couldn't complete a sentence. And later on I caught up with him and I'm like, "Dude, that's what we live for." He goes, "I've never seen anything that clear and actually moving towards me. I'm done. I just want to go home and process this." And I'm like, "Dude, we have 2 more hours of work in front of us." He's like, "No, I can't even." How do you move past that? You just sit there thinking, unless now a screaming skull comes flying down the hall at you, how do you get past that moment? Because anything else is quaint, right?
Yeah. Like when people ask us, like, what's the scariest location you've been to or whatnot? It's like, at this point, I can't tell you the scariest location. I can tell you scariest things that have happened. And then they're like, "What about this? What about this?" I'm like, once you have a mind-blowing experience, everything else you're like, yeah, whatever about that. Like, it was cool, but like, it wasn't this. And
do you ever find yourself, now you do these live events, do you ever find yourself jaded like I do, where somebody comes up to you and they're like, "Oh my God, I just caught this." And they play this EVP back and you hear, "Oh my God, it said get out." And you're like, "Oh yeah, that's cool." And they're so excited, but you're like, you forget what it's like to have those first initial moments. And then, you're kind of, like I said, you're waiting for the severed head to come flying down the hall at you.
Yeah, you definitely do. And it's like, you have to remind yourself that it's might be their first time having paranormal activity or them capturing it. So I get excited for them because I'm like, you believe you captured something.
Yeah.
Which
I
is
love being next to the people when they have that first experience. When
I love it when they have experience.
Right. Because even then, even if it's something small, to watch the excitement, it's like taking your kids to the zoo the first time and watching them go, "Oh, lions and tigers and bears," right? They're like, "Oh my God." And then suddenly you're excited about it again. And when these people start having those moments, that's why I love it.
Keep getting back in there. It's like, you gotta give them a break. Like, just like give them 5 minutes. I know it's exciting. You just want more, but it's like, that's why this field is so addicting.
Yeah.
Once
Definitely.
you get just a little bit of activity, you keep chasing after that adrenaline rush. Like, you keep wanting it. And I know that, we like to find answers for people and things like that, but we're all adrenaline junkies.
Yes.
We don't want to admit it, but every single one of us likes to get scared and have that adrenaline rush. A little part of us has to. Otherwise, I don't think we keep coming back.
Yeah. I've had those
wrong with all of us, to be honest with you.
I've had those moments when they do something that legitimately freaks me out, and then I've had something laugh at me directly afterwards, like, "Oh yeah, you're the big bad ghost hunter. All I had to do is give you a little nudge and now you're ready to run." And it is funny because the spirit realm, they know they're messing with you.
Yeah.
I've asked the other two, of course, what their belief is. Why places like basements, closets, under our beds, the attic, those are the most obscure places to consider having activity. Why do you think that the paranormal finds their way to those spots?
Okay, so I was thinking about this, all right? I know that Brian had mentioned that Alton, where we live, is all the different minerals and all the different things that hold paranormal or energy that can amplify it, which I agree. I agree with that completely. Also, you have to think about the history. We were part of the Underground Railroad. So a lot of stuff happened then. But then if you want to take it not to this part, but like to the scary part, think about where you hide your deepest, darkest secrets. You hide them in a basement. You hide them in an attic. You hide them under the bed.
Yeah.
You don't hide them in the living room.
Skeletons in the closet is a remark for a reason, right?
Exactly. And like, I know Brian and I have talked about it. I'm like, maybe entities go where there aren't people if they don't want to interact, or they just need a break from people. So they go to those areas that people don't visit. But then I also think about how many, like, if we're going to get dark, okay?
Get dark, bring it.
I'm not saying that this is just a theory. It's one theory. I have a bunch of theories, but this is one theory that doesn't really go with theirs. If you're going to do something bad, okay, you're not going to do it on a ground level. Most likely, you'll go in the basement. Think about all the people that have been murdered in a basement. Or, like, you constantly see people bought a house and then they started remodeling and or something went wrong in the basement and they had to dig up the floor and they find skeletons. Like, people hide things in basements.
Right.
Like, but then I also think about, like, subconsciously or psychologically, like, a lot of people are afraid of being buried alive or death, being underground. A basement's underground. So subconsciously, that you're underground. Maybe consciously you do, but subconsciously you don't realize that it's your body being fearful of it. So when you go down there, all your senses are heightened. Like, you're in that fight or flight response, kind of like an animal.
I like it.
Know if they're being stalked or watched. You can feel it. It's part of their makeup. We're animals. It's part of our makeup to be able to say, hey, something's off, to protect yourself. So when you go in the basement, it could be that, you have that fear of being buried alive. You're underground. You also could have the fear of, like, maybe that fear is heightening your senses, so you're able to feel paranormal activity and feel those presences, because you're like, your body's like, hey, someone's down here with you and you just need a heads up. I know
I like it.
It's weird.
No, I like it. It's another hypothesis, another thing to consider and think about. Very cool. Now, you guys are not just doing the Palmer House. You've got a lot of other locations. Give a quick mention of where people can see you around the United States this year.
We're going to be going to Old South Pittsburgh Hospital June 18th. Then we'll be at the Palmer House July 8th and 9th. In August, we will be going to hang out at Bobby Mackey's. We will also be at Michigan Paracon. We're going to Haunt Atlanta in September. I believe that's September. I get so, all these dates run together. Right. We will be at the new location. I believe it's Old Harriam Hospital.
Okay.
Which Ronnie D, who owns Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, bought this new location. So we'll be doing an event there as well, which we're excited about. We will be going to the temple in Salina, Kansas. We've got a bunch of stuff. We're talking, I don't know. It's hard to keep track. I'm glad you didn't ask Brian these, because he doesn't know where he's going.
Why do you think I waited to talk to you? So I'm glad. Well, like I said, I'll put a link up to your link tree or whatever, so people can find all the events that are coming up. Richel, it's always great catching up with you. Thank you so much for stopping by and giving us a little story and insight today.
Well, thank you for having me, and I hope I didn't sound too crazy.
Well, you do, but you fit right in with the rest of us, so thank you for doing that. All right, guys. Amazing times, right? We live in an amazing time in an amazing world full of strange things. And that's exciting. And it is strange to consider, right, that within each of our homes, there may be these portals that bridge the gap between the spirit realm and the physical realm, where they come together in perfect concert. These basements, attics, closets, and under our beds. We're going to continue to investigate these claims and hypotheses for now, and we'll talk about them as the show continues to progress. And if you have ideas and concepts or your own spooky stories regarding these spaces to share, send them to dave@paranormal60.com. That's dave@paranormal60.com, and share them with the like-minded friends from around the world and they may be featured here on an upcoming episode. Or better yet, videotape yourself sharing those thoughts and email them over to dave@paranormal60.com. I'd like to thank my guests, Brian Murray, Richel Stratton, and Scott Wolter. Thank you all for visiting the Paranormal 60 and allowing me along on your journey. May the darkness be a little bit more light with the information that we shared here. And remember, when you're feeling fear and isolation from the experiences you had or continue to have, you're not alone. And there is someone there to believe you. Your Paranormal 60 pal, good old Darkness Dave. Make sure to like this video and podcast, subscribe, and tell everyone you know about it. And for our new podcast listeners, please rate and review the show. Go ahead, give it 5 stars. You know you want to do it. We'll see you again right here next week on the Paranormal 60 with Dave Schrader, and this Friday with the Paranormal 60 Minutes News Crew. This program is part of the UnX Network. Check out UnX for other great programs just like this one.